Okay, JD here from Rome Blockchain and Tashi. Thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to come up here and chat with everybody today. I appreciate all the feedback we have received on the proposal, but I think there's a few high-level items that I think are really worth discussing. So I first want to say that we're not approaching this in a contentious manner in any way. The only way that Evmos succeeds is if DeFi succeeds in the short term. And so that requires Stride, Notional, us, Forge, and all the other primitives to be working together, to be coordinating activities to actually spark DeFi. Now, this proposal was not written haphazardly. I've done this in many different ecosystems, and this is by far the most conservative proposal. The key here, guys, that's worth noting is I hate liquidity mining. I think I've called it the liquidity mining circus for years, but whether I hate it or love it, it still exists. And if we want to see the token value Evmos go up, so a lot of the comments are, well, the token value of Evmos is going down, so we don't want to give any emissions away because that's going to create more sell pressure. The vast majority of sell pressure of Evmos is from validation anyways. This is a rounding error in total daily emissions. That's point number one. Point number two is, it doesn't matter how good your protocol is or how good the tech is. If people earn more money next door, they're going to stay where they're at. They're not going to move assets into Evmos. And so, I mean, if we don't have any TVL in 6 months or 9, 12 months from now, Evmos token price is going to go to zero. I mean, that's all there is to it. So we can all hoard this nut and watch the nut value go down and down, or we can figure out as a community, as a group, as core contributors to Evmos, how we're going to work together to make this work. Now, that's my stump speech. Apologize for it being a little lengthy. I think I want to address a few of the comments. The Stride assets, so we are agnostic to which assets we support, okay? As soon as the Stride assets have meaningful enough TVL and liquidity, we will list them when Chaos Labs says it's acceptable. We cannot list them now and will not list them until we have that approval. So I see a lot of this, like, let's support Stride. There's going to be other liquid staking assets in the ecosystem. We're going to support any and all of them. Any asset in Evmos, whether it's related to me or to us or not, we will support it if it meets the criteria, period, end of story. So that's the first piece. We can't support liquid staked tokens now because they do not have enough liquidity. It's also worth noting, Evmos itself doesn't have enough liquidity to be collateralized on Tashi at the moment. So there's a lot of comments here about why we're incentivizing ETH and why we're incentivizing other assets when quite a few people are suggesting, obviously the people directly from Stride are saying, well, we only want to see ST Evmos and ST Atom supported. Okay, so there's a few reasons why that doesn't work. The only reason that the liquid staking assets matter on lending protocols is so that you can facilitate leverage. You can deposit your ST Evmos, borrow Evmos against it, use that Evmos to create more ST Evmos, and so on and so forth. Or is for the capital efficiency of being able to borrow Evmos against your ST Evmos, or to go and sell your ST Evmos for another asset. The problem is, if on the DEXs we only incentivize the ST assets, we have no path back to majors, which is really, really important for swaps, slippage, and liquidations. Again, like we have multiple quant firms that work with us on these thresholds. So this isn't just me putting these numbers out here going, hey guys, please give us some cash. I promise it's going to work. The actual story is that this is done based on modeling, financial models. Many, many, many millions of simulations give us these thresholds. And I'm not kidding. The cloud cost is almost 20 grand a month just to run the sims that we run for a lending protocol. And I'm happy to.
Real quick, I want to ask something about you. You had mentioned. What are you able to share what the criteria is?
So the criteria
from Chaos Labs?
Yeah, so the criteria, and Omer, the founder of Chaos Labs, has been a good friend of mine for 4 or 5 years outside of crypto. So we have a really, really close working relationship with them. And every ecosystem, the criteria is different. But you need multiple millions of dollars as an example, for Chaos Labs to approve SAVX, our liquid staking product on Avalanche, we had to have initially $10 million in DEX liquidity to go from SAVX to AVX. Not just SAVX liquidity, SAVX to AVX liquidity. We had to have above $10 million worth of liquidity. Now, we know that that's not the case for any of the assets on Evmos, so we have to deal with where we're at right now. Technically, the only reason we're listing wrapped ETH and wrapped Bitcoin is because those are huge, deep liquidity assets, and on most ecosystems, they don't have any yield. So if we want to get the TVL numbers up, which is what everybody's watching to assess momentum in Evmos, we have to focus on the things that can actually lead us to that in the short term. Do I want ST Evmos to be the main incentivized asset in the ecosystem? Sure. I'm a huge fan of liquid staking assets. Obviously, I have a liquid staking platform that we support in many ecosystems. So obviously, I'm a huge fan of liquid staking, but we have to do it in a way that protects the security of the lending protocol, of the ecosystem. Again, remember, if the lending protocol has issues and we end up with a whole bunch of bad debt, the contagion of that is across the entire ecosystem. All of Evmos has contagion from poor decisions based on lending protocols. So that's why it's non-negotiable that we work with Chaos Labs, so that we have a third party that is absolutely committed to understanding and modeling all of this stuff. So hopefully does that help? Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, no, that's great insight, and I appreciate you like jumping in.
No, yeah, no,
yeah. I think maybe at this point, if you don't mind, I could enter the conversation.
Absolutely.
So yeah, for everybody here in this room, unfortunately, this is a really small group, so we can have like a nice kind of friendly conversation. I do work for Stride. I do growth and strategy for Stride. So obviously, I'm in favor of ST Atom and ST ETH for that reason. But for the purpose of this conversation, I think I'll try and kind of put that aside and just look at it sort of objectively from the perspective of the Evmos ecosystem. And it seems to me that from that perspective, like even from that perspective, putting aside Stride, ST Atom and ST Evmos seem like pretty good collateral assets for Tashi here on Evmos. And some facts about the Cosmos ecosystem. There is more than $10 million worth of ST Atom liquidity available. In fact, throughout the Cosmos currently, I think there's about $20 or $25 million worth of liquidity. So the liquidity threshold that you mentioned has been met. It's not
on exchanges.
It's not on Evmos.
On exchanges. That's liquidity on exchanges, not total TVL.
Yeah, that is on exchanges.
There's 20 million on exchanges. I wasn't able to. Where's the lion's share of that living then? Because I couldn't see 20 million.
On Evmos. Or sorry, on Osmosis.
Osmosis. Okay, so yeah, like we obviously have, Chaos has factored in the outpost and IBC and other opportunities to move around inside of Cosmos. So again, I'm not opposed to listing ST assets as soon as possible. So I'm totally with you. I mean, liquid staking assets, in my opinion, are wildly beneficial to the ecosystem. The problem with liquid staking assets is they present a massive risk vector if there's a depeg, if there's mismanagement, if there's bad debt, if there's cascading liquidations. So we have to be very, very careful how we work that inside of a lending protocol, because we have an outsized influence. But go ahead. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. But I just like to provide some context for the Cosmos ecosystem. So there is like a precedent for doing exactly what we're proposing here. I mean, currently the situation is there's about $20 million worth of ST Atom liquidity on Osmosis, and that is to maintain the peg. There's an additional approximately $4 million on Neutron, and in addition, there's about $1.3 million on Secret, on Shade Protocol. So we have our liquidity hosted throughout the Cosmos on various dexes on various chains to make it redundant. And of course, these are on separate chains than Evmos, but they're easily accessible via IBC. And that enables such other chains as UMI, for instance. UMI is a separate app chain here in the Cosmos, and all it is a money market. It's just a money market on its own chain, and it offers ST Atom as collateral. And currently, there's about $4 million worth of ST Atom collateral sitting on this chain right now. backing loan positions. Additionally, on Secret, there's a lot of ST Atom collateral. On Kujira, on Neutron, it's going to be added shortly. So really, like essentially, the situation is we've got about $25 million of trading liquidity for ST Atom throughout the Cosmos. And I'd say off the top of my head, about $5 or $7 million of ST Atom, which is currently acting as collateral for loans right now. And
so
it seems to work.
We can absolutely look into that. With respect, none of the lending protocols that I've seen in the Cosmos at all have a TVL that I care about. So if their TVL is sub 100 million, then we can't say that whatever incentivization strategies they're using are actually efficient. If the total TVL is 10, 15, 20 million on a lot of these platforms, I mean, that's not super compelling. They're
not using incentivization strategies. I mean, that's the point. ST Atom, because the yield is built in on UMI, on Shade, on Kujira, on Mars, it doesn't need to be incentivized. And the point is, all throughout the Cosmos, we've got ST Atom being used as collateral right now, and not a single incentive is being used to incentivize the collateralization of ST Atom anywhere.
Does that make you wonder why only a tiny fraction of people holding Atom have actually liquid staked it?
No, it doesn't, because it's comparable to other ecosystems. Do you know what the percentage is on Avalanche of liquid staked AVAX?
Yeah, we've got about 7%, 6%.
Okay, and how long has that been offered for? Because in the Cosmos, liquid staking has been
over a year. No, a little over a year.
Okay, well, it's similar here. It's a little less than a year in the Cosmos. Liquid staking has only been offered since September, and I think we're at about 1.5% of the total staked amount currently being liquid staked.
Right.
But so the point is that it's taking off, and I would just say, like, the context here is incentives aren't necessary for ST Atom anywhere, which is a good thing because it's sustainable.
What I can tell you with certainty is that every other ecosystem that we're in, the liquid staked assets are incentivized. Evmos is the only place that is being really crazy about it. As an example, one protocol on Avalanche today announced $3 million worth of liquidity mining for the next 8 weeks. So if we think that we're going to compete with liquidity elsewhere without incentivizing these protocols early on and meaningfully, we're not going to get assets, guys. Like, I wouldn't put my assets on Evmos if I didn't have a protocol here because the yield is too low. The risk is too high. I'm an outsized risk compared to the rest of the TVL in the ecosystem. So, I mean, like I said, I'm with you, man. I hate incentives. I think they ruin protocols. Do I want to be giving out a ton of our tokens in emissions just to encourage people to bring assets over? No. But if we want to seed an ecosystem beyond 2 million monthly volume on Forge, I mean, we have to start incentivizing liquidity. Full stop.
Well, I fully agree, and I think the Evmos community is, on board with using incentives. We see a lot of incentives being used on Forge. The only point of contention is if we use liquid stake.
Forge has 2 million a month in volume, my friend. So those incentives aren't being used properly, obviously. Unless DeFi Llama is completely wrong, but like that's very little volume.
I think you have to consider the trading liquidity. I mean, I think the available trading liquidity is being used pretty efficiently, like the utilization of the available trading liquidity that's being attracted with incentives.
But there's how much TVL is on Forge? 2 million? Like what I'm telling you guys is that we essentially can't collateralize any assets right now because there's not enough DEX liquidity. So if all you want to do is incentivize ST assets, we can do that. But I can assure you we won't be able to lend anything because there needs to be much deeper liquidity of all of the other assets. Now, I understand, my friend, that you're from Stride and that you want Stride assets to be supported. I would love to list and support Stride assets. I will look into ST Atom. ST Evmos, as far as I know, doesn't have enough liquidity anywhere. ST Atom may, and I'll have Chaos Labs look into that immediately. And if we can list that at launch, I would love to. Absolutely. I'm not opposed to incentivizing it. What I'm saying is we need to take a macro look at this as a group, Forge, Stride, us, Evmos Foundation, Evmos DAO, whoever else is a meaningful stakeholder. And we need to say, okay, instead of each of us coming at this from the perspective of our individual protocols, which is natural for us to do, we have to say, okay, how can we have a meaningful conversation here about ecosystem-wide incentive strategies so that we're not cutting off our nose to spite our face? That's all I'm suggesting here. And I mean, the vast majority of the feedback that we see on Commonwealth right now is about the ST assets, which I suspect is the Stride army coming in and giving a lot of comments, which is fine. I totally support
let me jump in here. Let me jump in. I mean, I don't necessarily think that's fair to say. And I'm just going to add some points, and then I'm going to shoot it over to Kilo to let him add his thoughts. He has joined the stage. You know, like when you referenced not caring about TVL less than 100 million, I think I like that optimism and that big macro approach, but the world that we live in on the Cosmos side, I think I got to kind of take a step back and look at the liquidity at these other, you know, Cosmos lending platforms, and understand that Evmos will probably be in that realm. I like
not a single lending protocol in Evmos is even remotely close to profitable. So yeah, if we cannot get to those liquidity levels fast enough, then even Tashi becomes a DAO and becomes a community project because there's no money to run it. So I'm with you, but that whether we think that's viable in the short term or not, what are we all doing here if we don't think we can get up to multiple tens of millions of liquidity in the next year and a half?
Yeah,
the next bull.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I just don't want to discount some of this Cosmos native stuff. Like, you know, the push for using Stride assets is based off of, you know, although Forge has low liquidity and low volume, and your, you know, from your perspective, it's largely been like the most successful like liquidity program on Evmos. And since Evmos launched, there's been, you know, multiple different dexes that have tried and have failed, and it wasn't until you know, Forge
with respect though, I mean, had I known how contentious this environment was going to be, like a lot of those protocols probably fail because you're definitely not welcomed by the Evmos incumbents. I'll tell you that for free. Like that, there has not been a welcoming feeling at all. It's been, if anything, contentious for absolutely no reason. Like we're here trying to contribute to Evmos the same way you guys are. Like this is, I'm not sure how else to explain this. Like why else would I launch a protocol? We make no money off it unless it's successful.
I understand that, and it shouldn't be contentious. And if that's the way it's hitting, you know, that's not good, right? But what I see, I guess, from my perspective, is that the community, you know, cares. They're interested, and these types of discussions are productive, and you know, it's from a respect standpoint, and not from like a, hey, we don't want outsiders or anything like that. It's from, hey, like,
of course,
let's work together.
And I can acknowledge that, and I appreciate the sentiment. Thank you.
Yeah, let's give Kilo an opportunity here to jump in. He's joined the stage a couple minutes ago, so I'd like to let him hop in. Okay,
so
go ahead, Dan.
I think maybe to continue the conversation a little bit, I just want to pose one small question, and this is not meant to be contentious at all. Maybe we can explore this and discuss it a little bit together. If the Evmos community does decide to incentivize the collateralization of Atom, just unstaked Atom, how could that ever be made sustainable? Because this is something I think about a lot personally. I'm working for Stride. The staking reward for Atom is 20%, and if you're going to be doing a loan to value of, let's say, 50%, so you're putting down 2 Atom for every $1 you're borrowing, you're forfeiting, by not having it staked, you're forfeiting 40% every year on missed staking rewards, which is a pretty big opportunity cost. And
yep.
So it just like, is there any way to make borrowing Atom sustainable without incentives? Like, is there any off-ramp if we were to start incentives for lending Atom?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think, at least in my opinion, an astute observation. Having said that, one of the biggest advantages, I mentioned this before, one of the biggest advantages for your liquid staked assets is the ability to use recursive lending to create synthetic leverage. So what is a 40% yield right now, or 20% for Atom, can become 60% yield if you use the lending protocol properly with very little additional risk. So, and in order to do that, you need meaningful liquidity of Atom, unstaked Atom. And so it's a bit of a trade-off. You're right. There is no silver bullet. There's no perfect way to do this. But in order to get the overall macro TVL of the ecosystem and volumes of the ecosystem up, we have to give optionality for that. And I mean, again, to say that we're only going to incentivize something that 1.5% of people hold, that argument is as good for the other 98.5% of people that aren't staking their Atom. Why not? Why aren't they liquid staking their Atom? I don't know, but they still hold Atom. So if we're going after a TAM of 1%, 1.5% versus a TAM of 98.5% of that Atom supply, I think it is very short-sighted to consider that short-term. Now, do I completely and utterly support your theory that the liquid staked asset is orders of magnitude more efficient and better for the end user? Of course, I completely agree with that. And absolutely we want to support ST Atom and ST Evmos and other liquid staking products as they come about. And absolutely we want to incentivize those greater than the others, but there's a balancing act. They all have to be incentivized to a certain amount. Would I love to stop emissions on most of this stuff very soon? Absolutely. I think there is a way that we can work together on that and to find a meaningful middle ground. You're right, though. There's probably no way to make the economic argument around incentivizing Atom as positive in the short term. It only makes sense if it is impactful in bootstrapping and sparking liquidity and momentum. So that's the idea here, is not just, does this make absolute sense in the next week or two, but rather, if we don't spark liquidity, we're going to lose any momentum to our competitors in Evmos.
Yeah,
meaning Kava and others, which I know we all don't want.
Right. So as an observation, like it seems like what we're talking about, incentivizing the collateralization of unstaked Atom, it seems like it's kind of a marketing spend or an ad spend, and I mean, maybe that's okay.
But related to why I wanted to jump up here is I'm not an economics person. I've never really pretended to be. So I had a question. When we're talking TVL, like ST Atom, right? 20 million on osmosis. Does that mean it was, specifically stated like ST Atom pool? Does that mean like 20 million in the pool? So 10 million ST Atom, 10 million Atom, or is that 20 million ST Atom with 20 million Atom for a 40 million pool? Where does the differentiation come there?
The first thing you said was accurate. So it's about $10 million worth of Atom paired with about $10 million of ST Atom.
Gotcha. Okay. But yeah,
which is very likely viable, by the way. The only other thing that we really need to look at is the wallet concentration of those assets. That matters. And what the slippage is for large enough movements. So if the slippage is tight, which it should be, then it's actually pretty likely. The last thing is volumes, is swap volumes. It's not just how much TVL, it's how much swap volume. But with 20 million TVL, I'm pretty sure there should be enough. But yeah. I can't guarantee that until I talk to Chaos.
Yeah, and another sticking point since you jumped in is Pith doesn't support ST Atom. In the Cosmos, like this is kind of a smaller neighborhood in crypto. Things are on kind of a smaller scale. So ST Atom is not currently supported by Pith. So in order to get a good Oracle feed, you would need to work with another Oracle. And there are other Oracles available in the Cosmos. For instance, Oho, which currently provides the Oracle feed from Osmosis to the Rome blockchain. And there's like $4 million worth of ST Atom collateral on the UMI blockchain secured by that oracle. So that would be another
so that
thing.
that's a good point. That was a question that actually was brought up somewhere on Commonwealth. I wish I could find it so I could read this. But we're not opposed. We actually do, after a certain amount of time, build in load balancing with oracles. So we don't always just use one oracle anyways. There's a reason we use Pith, and we've spent tens and tens and tens of hours investigating as many of the oracle providers as alternates to Chainlink as possible. We've talked to pretty much everybody. We've done deep dives on their tech. The best technology, the most flexible technology, the most reliable technology, second to Chainlink, is Pith. Full stop. I mean, I've had my entire engineering team look at it. That's how we feel about that. Now, could we also incorporate OHO to get ST assets quickly? Yeah, absolutely. There's really no reason for that to not happen. I'm not sure, as long as I can get ST Atom and ST Evmos feeds, which I can get Pith to do, as long as I can get them, it shouldn't matter to anybody where they're coming from. So again, if you want us to use OHO, sure. If we can list ST Atom and I can't get Pith to do it, of course. All it is just a different oracle to check. It's very, very simple. So that's absolutely doable.
Okay. Yeah. Nice. That's good to hear. That's a good outcome from this conversation. Were you still talking, Kilo? I think we may have cut you off a little bit.
Yeah, it's all right. I was just, it was brought up that, certain interactions were, contentious or, unwelcoming. And I wanted to point out that from my perspective, having a bit of defiance is second best only to praise, because it means that people care and they're willing to actually see through to a proper, promising outcome for everybody. So, although things like that might be a bump in the road, it's generally a good sign that you're going to make some progress.